All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
My goodness. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am bathed in the adulation that comes with recorded applause. It's so wonderful. Albert, it is great to see you always.
Albert, thank you.
Particularly today. I think you've shown some additional hustle. And Kim, what can I say? It's great to see you.
Kim, how are you?
By the way, Kim was active in the chat last night. I was looking to see who's first into the chat. And it's like the after party live is in. I'm like, what the hell is the after party live doing? It's 1:21 in the morning, and the after party live is saying good morning.
That's right.
It's kind of a cheat, if I can say that. I mean, and I also think it's a little bit of a desperate call for attention in the middle of the night because you're feeling lonely.
I think there's a hint of desperation. I really do.
I agree. So
I was trying to kickstart the algorithm and give you a little love.
Oh, is that right? You were trying to kickstart the algorithm?
All I get in response is a slap down.
I don't know. Well, look, if that's true, I want to give you mad respect for it.
How does the internet work?
I know. I'm unclear on it myself. But first into the chat today, really, Zero Sum. So congratulations, Zero Sum, for being here. The other thing I noticed in the chat was someone pointing out, Rhonda points out, I woke up to all the maggots upset about Cracker Barrel going woke. Now, I don't know anything about this story. Thank you also, Kelly Malloy, for a $2 super chat just to get the super chats and super stickers. Kelly's actually a super sticker, getting him going today. But tell me about this Cracker Barrel thing. I don't know. I've never been in a Cracker Barrel. Is it
I also have never been in a Cracker Barrel, but on researching this story, because, we leave no stone unturned on the Mark Thompson Show, I have discovered that my friend and colleague Albert has indeed been inside of a Cracker Barrel more than once.
Wow. Well, tell us about Cracker Barrel. I mean, I know it because it was in the news, and it's been in the news over the last, I'm going to say, 8 or so years. But what's the controversy with Cracker Barrel right now? They've changed their logo?
It's their logo.
Well, what is their...
So they had a guy with the overalls, like the old guy leaning on a barrel. That was the old Cracker Barrel logo. And now they've changed to the simpler, perhaps more eye-grabbing Cracker Barrel, just with the yellow cracker behind it.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that.
It's a barrel-shaped cracker. So they do say the barrel shape is still there.
I see. So it's literally a cracker? I didn't realize that. Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, cracker is always the disparaging way to refer to white people, right? In the black community, cracker. The idea is that you're white as a cracker. I think that's where it came from, as a white cracker. Here is a Cracker Barrel on the inside.
Inside, okay. With
the rocking got that country new furniture. Yeah.
Yeah, they had like table games, like really small ones, and they have a country store at the beginning. So even before you get to the restaurant, you're walking through memorabilia and items and rocking chairs outside.
No, I think that's
super
I've
large.
never seen anything like it.
I think it's kind of down home fine. I don't understand the problem. Has it become it's become politicized, right? It's become like it's MAGA land, or what is the story?
When I was asking Albert, is it kind of like Olive Garden or Red Lobster, like a kind of chain like that?
Right.
He said, if you're a Trumper.
It's like a chain. It is a chain. It is a chain, like a Midwest South chain.
Yeah.
Huge portions, American food. I remember getting the country fried steak, and it was like enough for a family of 3, probably.
Vicky's in Sausalito says, I think Cracker Barrel is kind of a Southern thing. It does have a sort of a Southern vibe, or kind of a down-home country vibe anyway, right? Yeah.
Did you know there are Cracker Barrels in California?
I would think there might be. In fact, as you showed me the interior, I'm thinking there's one on the way to Las Vegas from Los Angeles.
I think there is, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been there and didn't even realize it. I kind of thought it was great. They had just what you're talking about. They have this like a merch thing out front, with kind of like knock around all that stuff, like the little license plates with people's names on them or whatever. And then this huge bar. You can sit there at the counter, not a bar. You know what I mean? Like where you can order at the counter. And then they have a restaurant there. It kind of looks like an upgraded Denny's or something. Yeah.
There's one in the Sacramento area, and there's one in, I want to say in the Central Valley, I think Albert was telling me. So, we do have the opportunity to partake here in California. I just haven't been to one.
They introduced a veggie burger to the menu at Cracker Barrel, and people went crazy saying that they were woke, says Sandy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
it's not my Cracker Barrel.
It's
Ain't
a
no
place
veggie
when
burgers in my Cracker Barrel, man.
You wear your MAGA hat, and it's the one place no one looks at you askance.
Yeah, that's right.
You fit right in. You're okay.
Loud and proud.
Yeah.
There is one there. I just looked up on the map. There is one on the way to Las Vegas from the Los Angeles area.
Thank you. I think I've been there. I think I've been there more than once, and I kind of like it. Yeah. Where do I get my MAGA merch? I can't wait.
What?
I have my this is from the getmarkmerch.com. Born to Peacefully Resist with the Sun. I love this shirt. It was designed by Courtney. Of course, she doesn't like anything, so it arrived, and she goes, "Oh my God, the logo! No, I want it to be smaller." Blah 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 blah. I said, "It's great. I'm going to wear it on the air tomorrow." What are you talking about?
I think it looks good. I don't think they're going to sell that at the Cracker Barrel merch store.
No, you're right. Probably not on the list. There's the other one, Born to Peacefully Resist, with the Earth in the middle, and it's really great. But then the one I'm wearing is this with the sunshine. I just kind of like it. It's kind of a throwback design.
Yeah.
So if you are interested, you can run over to our merch store. There's a lot of funky, fun stuff. And then there's also some political stuff like this. That's getmarkmerch.com. Go there and enjoy. There's a cardigan sweater for the coming, season of peaceful protest. There's the cardigan sweater. And it's really fun. Some people have gotten stuff, and Courtney always drops them a note, and she's she's super busy. I'm amazed that she has time for this. But the bucket hat is the favorite of Richard Delamater. That's what he loves. So go for it, enjoy, and you can wear a Born to Peacefully Resist t-shirt just like, and of course, Albert, please don't skip over the socks. The socks are the runaway hit of the entire site. We could just shut down and just do the socks. I have them right here. They're wonderful. Mark Thompson Show crew socks are beautiful. Nice. Great thing. Logo. Yes. Put a bounce in your step. Grab those socks, baby. Come on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We're on our way to Venezuela as a nation. That's our new thing. That's where we're looking for the Epstein Files in Venezuela. That's, I think that's probably Trump ordering the Pentagon. He likes ordering things. He's ordered the Pentagon to deploy 3 warships against Latin American drug cartels. There's no better way to take down those drug cartels than to bring in the U.S. military. These are destroyers that are expected to patrol the South American coast near Venezuela. Albert, show us.
Would you call that provocative? Like, could this lead to something bad?
Oh, this can only lead to bad things or nothing. There's nothing good that can come from this, and certainly no amount of interdiction associated with drug transport on the open seas will be affected by this. To me, it's a flex. To me, it's a distraction. It's also a weird thing. Donald Trump, who, of course, used his bone spurs to get out of military service during Vietnam. And, I mean, there were a lot of people trying to get out of Vietnam service. So it's a weird thing to say, but I try to be fair to Trump. That was the environment it was in. His creation of these bone spurs, that was that environment that it was in. But I would say that there's something particularly rich about a guy who so actively evaded military service, insults Gold Star families, puts so many veterans who have been permanently affected and oftentimes in wheelchairs and maimed by war. They end up being put in the back of whatever photo op there is because Trump doesn't feel it shows off the shimmer of the U.S. military the way he wants to show it. He doesn't appreciate the sacrifice that these veterans have made. And he uses the military as a prop. I've said it before, from Trump season 1, where he sent the military down to go after the caravan. Remember the caravan that was coming up? They played it up on Fox News. Trump played it up as a big thing. And it was around Christmas time. He sent the military down to the southern border to meet the caravan right there. The T-shirt clad, jeans torn group of stragglers through Latin America who are just looking for water and food. And of course, fleeing the very scene in Latin America that we know about in Venezuela, in El Salvador, etc. Now, the next version of it is using the Marines and using the military in all kinds of different ways that really transcend even just being props. I'm talking about going to American cities, taking on democratic cities the way they are, getting the National Guard and the troops of Washington, D.C. That's another thing. It's not, there's a healthy amount of theater to that, but that's not just theater. So I think he does use the military as a prop. And so, as I say, it's kind of rich given the fact that he, in terms of a real relationship with the military, just likes to salute and kind of the cosplay of it, just to, he's the pretend military participant. He has kind of a 1950s John Wayne movie view of the military.
He's very military happy. He keeps trotting out. He trotted out the Marines in Los Angeles, the National Guard. He's, threatening to send everywhere and did send to LA and DC. So he's very military happy for,
as I
usually
say,
a president takes a lot of thought before they would send America's sons and daughters into any type of danger.
To Trump, again, with the military at his beck and call, it's the hammer and everything else looks like a nail. And so this drug thing, he's going to send the military to deal with it. Here's a little bit of a background on it.
Tonight, the Trump administration is cracking down on drug cartels at sea. A source briefed on the matter tells NBC News the U.S. is planning to deploy these 3 warships near Venezuela.
I like to stop right there. This is another way. I don't mean to dump on mainstream media. I know that's kind of like the favorite dumping ground for many progressive voices and even conservative voices in the mainstream media, etc. But when the report says Trump is cracking down on the transport of drugs at sea, he's sending the American, well, that's the White House narrative. You could have easily said the White House saying they are cracking down on the transport of drugs at sea is sending 3 warships, etc. That's not what's said. What's said is Trump is cracking down on drugs transported at sea. No, he's not. This is performative. This is a flex. But I want to point it out because you'll see it in a lot of different ways. So the propaganda of the White House gets out there. And it's the same thing that occurred for a while with the Vietnam War in the 60s. The official version of things gets out. Afghanistan was another example of that. So I don't want you to think it's a GOP thing or a Trump thing. It happens throughout. But I'd say in general now, people are very much on board with thumping the Trump message, at least at this moment, because they're worried about the repercussions. No one wants to take on Trump or even suggest that the official line isn't the line coming from the White House. Go ahead, Albert.
Coasts after reducing illegal border crossings to record lows.
They continue to send drugs into our country. Venezuela, they've been very nasty.
The Trump administration also recently doubling to $50 million its reward for the arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, saying he violated U.S. drug laws. Meanwhile, in the fight against traffickers, the Coast Guard says it intercepted more than $138 million worth of drugs in the Caribbean this summer. Earlier this year, the president designated several cartels, as well as the notorious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations. And despite pulling off a large-scale prisoner swap with Venezuela last month, President Trump has been increasingly at odds with Maduro.
He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel.
Now, the Venezuelan government has banned drone flights throughout the country amid what it considers a threat from the U.S. A U.S.
Look, as I say, I think this is a flex. And when you started with Canada and Mexico, that was the first smack talk of the first month of the Trump administration. And now we get the movement of warships. By the way, at least one of those warships is coming from the confrontation with the Houthis to protect transport through them. I mean, the real kind of shipping disruptions as a result of Houthi bombing. I'd suggest that substantively there was more there than there is moving those warships, or at least that warship, from there to Venezuela. But we can talk more about this. Again, I think it falls into the category of stuff Trump's doing. It's distraction away from Epstein Files, which haunt him, but it's also a flex. He loves the military flex. So
it just seems like taking a sledgehammer to a tiny problem. I'm not saying drugs are a tiny problem, but I feel like the Coast Guard is more apt to handle that, more prepared to handle it.
Thank you. Coast Guard is charged with doing that.
Yeah, and they've had great success. And you don't send a warship to something that is not really war related. I don't understand how this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense again as the theater, which is part of what Trump thinks is so very important. And as I said, he uses the military as a prop on a regular basis. So
the Mark Thompson Show.
As I mentioned Canada. This guy's really an outstanding voice out of Canada. Yeah, Dimitri Lascaris is a lawyer, an activist, journalist. And just in looking at his background, this is a while ago, but I love this. He was selected by Canadian Lawyer magazine as one of the 25 most influential lawyers in Canada. And I smile because I always love those top 25 things, and it's kind of a thing. But he was named in a number of these different ways as an extremely influential person within Canada. In fact, he was named one of the 50 most influential people in Canadian business. So this is a guy who I think brings a lot of a business background. He's also got a very strong political background in Canada. He ran for office there, I think in the Green Party. We'll talk to him a bit, but I really want to get his take on what's happening today, particularly as a result of some of these moves on the part of Trump. Super smart guy. Dimitri Lascaris, everyone. How are you, sir?
Thank you for the kind words, Mark. It's great to meet you finally, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. I'm anxious to get your thoughts on what's happening first with this move toward Venezuela. I think it's performative. I think Trump uses the military as a prop a lot of the time. I was mentioning in his first administration how he moved a bunch of military men down to the southern border for the caravan that was coming up, and they really sold that threat. I mean, that was clearly a problem. I think there's something sort of insulting to men and women who get into the military to sort of just be moved around the world for what is sort of the theater of military movement. And so I'm offended by it on their behalf. But I'm curious if you can maybe throw some substance into it. Maybe there's something to this Venezuela thing. I think it's completely one-dimensional.
Well, I've been to Venezuela twice, most recently in the last presidential election, which happened. I can't remember if it was this year, and so much has happened since then, or late last year, but I was invited by the Socialist Party of Venezuela to be an election observer. And based on what I saw, Mark, and that was not the first time I was in Venezuela. I was there after the first election for Nicolas Maduro. I saw no evidence of voter fraud. Now, I went to some polling stations. I can't tell you, I can't verify that there was no voter fraud, but I certainly didn't see anything. And, election observers from the West have generally certified that Venezuela's electoral process is of a very high standard, even by the standards of Western states. So I think this claim that Nicolas Maduro is not the legitimate president of Venezuela is nonsense. Is there drugs? Are there drugs flowing out of the country? There may be, but I have seen no evidence that Nicolas Maduro is coordinating this, is encouraging this, or is in any way participating in it. It's just
aren't the narco cartels, though, politically powerful there? I mean, that's kind of a polite way to put it.
I really am not aware of any credible evidence that the government is in bed with the narco cartels. I would not doubt at all, especially when you're dealing with a country that has been ravaged by sanctions and so many people have been cast into poverty. They begin to engage in activities that are potentially quite lucrative, and the drug trade can be very lucrative. So I would not be at all surprised if there is a very significant presence of drug cartels in Venezuela. What I haven't seen is, I can't say that the evidence doesn't exist, but I have not seen credible evidence that Nicolas Maduro is somehow encouraging, facilitating, or participating in the drug trade. Now, let's just put aside Nicolas Maduro here. The evidence is overwhelming that the war on drugs is a spectacular failure. Okay, so let's be very clear about that. And if you want to bring an end to substance abuse, it's not enough to interdict the introduction of narcotics into the United States. You actually have to address the underlying causes of substance abuse. And the United States has no interest in doing that. The Trump administration seems hell-bent on creating more poverty, more social injustice, more desperation, and inevitably this will lead to an increase in drug abuse. And if there's a demand, history has shown, if there is a demand, somehow the drugs will come in. So the drug war is a failure. It's not just me saying that. Countless experts have said it over a period of decades. And I think that this is really just a screen for another agenda, part of which you've quite properly pointed to, which is Trump likes to look tough and militaristic and so forth. But I think they are really seriously contemplating military action against Nicolas Maduro because there's a hell of a lot of oil in Venezuela, and they want to control that oil. It's as simple as that. They've been coveting that oil for decades. And putting this bounty on his head and claiming that he's deeply involved in the drug trade, whether or not it's true, the real motivation here is to justify a military assault or some kind of a coup in Venezuela. That's my fear.
It's certainly true that the U.S. through the years, under the claims that, democracy's being threatened or democracy needs to rise again, has moved into any number of theaters of conflict with the real notion of plundering resources or grabbing a lot of what is that country's economic pipeline. I mean, literally in Venezuela's case, there's a tremendous amount of oil, as you say. And I look at the configuration of the Trump administration and, the sort of neocons that you don't associate it with MAGA. I mean, MAGA, which really was I think, animated this rise the second time of this presidency. They're conflict averse, as you know, supposedly. But then you have people within the administration, is my point, like Marco Rubio, who I think would be, licking his chops to try to get into some kind of conflict in Venezuela. I mean, see his background coming from Cuba, et cetera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that tells you all you need to know about what the real motivation here is. I have contacts in Cuba who've told me that since the Trump administration has come back, the situation there has become particularly harsh for the civilian population. They're suffering more than ever. And I think that Rubio, with Trump's blessing, is trying to destroy any and all resistance to U.S. hegemony in Latin America. So it's not just, I think we're seeing indications of this in Bolivia. We're seeing indications of this in Mexico, even though Claudia Sheinbaum is not a radical. She is a progressive, but she's not maybe a social democrat. I don't think you could characterize her fairly as a radical socialist. All of these governments in Latin America that have shown a degree of concern for the people and a desire to establish national sovereignty are going to come under some form of assault from the Trump administration and by its predecessor as well. And Marco Rubio is going to lead that charge. Yeah. So I think we're being set up here for some kind of a military assault. I want to say one other thing, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. You're right to point to the fact that Trump wants to position himself as a peacemaker to his base. There are many people in the MAGA movement who are fed up with America's forever wars. So he has to find some other pretext for launching some kind of military action against Venezuela. And I think that this allegation of, Maduro being deeply involved in the narcotics trade is a way to do that.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting notion that he would pivot, from his base. He seems so wedded to trying to take care of his base politically at every turn. It's a really fascinating notion that he would pivot to look for other support. He's also And this I've heard, I hear this from the far left that goes so far left in this country, in my judgment, that they even start to quack as right, that sort of continuum that goes all the way around, specifically when it came to Trump support from my lefties, like my real far lefties. They were embracing Trump as a never wars president, as someone who's going to get us out of these conflicts, because that was the quack that he did on the way to the presidency. First, I would always say, show me a president who, on the way to the presidency, is talking about getting into more wars. None of them do. They all want to end the wars. I mean, this is absurd that you would buy this notion. But literally, a high-profile person with millions and millions of supporters. I was having dinner with him, and he's telling me, I can't believe it. I really believed that Trump was conflict averse. No, there's an inexorable kind of draw that presidents find themselves in. And Trump, I think, when it meets his sort of desire to do that masculine flex we talk about, which he finds in the military, in a way, it's the perfect storm led by the Rubios of the world.
Mark, this subject just drives me nuts. I have to tell you, I've been harping on this on my program for going all the way back to the beginning of the presidential contest. This idea that Donald Trump is a peacemaker. Here's a simple proposition for people to ponder. You are what your record says you are. So let's look at the Trump administration's record the first time around. Okay, they whatever you may think of Iran, whatever you may think of Qasem Soleimani, the top general of Iran, they assassinated him, and that was a highly provocative move and an act of war. And the fact is that the Iranians, for reasons of prudence, reacted in a restrained way, and we didn't end up in a full-blown war. But that could have ended up in a full-blown war. The Trump administration pulled the United States out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty on a false pretext, which was a pillar of nuclear disarmament and nuclear arms regulation in Europe. The Trump administration was the first U.S. administration to send lethal weapons to Ukraine. We all see where that has led. He says, I had nothing to do with this war. Oh, he was absolutely implicated in the circumstances that led to this war. The Trump administration recognized Israel's illegal annexation of the Golan Heights. When I say illegal, you don't have to take my word for it. Countless resolutions of the UN General Assembly and UN Security Council have said this. He moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, even though Jerusalem was supposed to be a joint capital of the Israelis and the Palestinians. And the Palestinians have no state up until now. I could go on, Mark. The fact of the matter is that his first record is one of a warmonger. And then you come to the current administration. What has happened since he came into power? He was bombing the bejesus out of Yemen, which has suffered incredibly as a result of the Saudi-led war on that country with the U.S. backing. He started with Israel, another war on Iran, almost led to a conflagration in West Asia. The situation in Gaza has gotten only worse, certainly hasn't gotten better since he came to office. The Ukraine war, which he promised to end within 24 hours, rages on, arguably even more intense than it was when he returned to the White House in January. Again, I could go on and on. There's really no credible evidence to support the claim that Donald Trump is a peacemaker, and there's a mountain of evidence to support the claim that he is a warmonger.
Just so well said. I want to go back to Ukraine for a second, because you've really had some provocative notions about what's happening there. And one of the things I want to start with is the conflict itself. I've seen from the beginning, Russia is going to walk over Ukraine. This is going to be a 4-day thing, and they're going to take the entire country. Even Trump was sort of suggesting, if it weren't for me, they would have been in Kiev in 4 hours, or whatever the rhetoric was. There was a sense that the Russian military is just, no match for, I should say, the Ukrainian military, no match for the Russians. So obviously that wasn't true. This war grinds on. It's almost got a World War I feel to it, with this, reminds me of that kind of trench warfare that I read about. I mean, it's horrible. It's grotesque, and war is grotesque in every way. And this war seems to have all those aspects woven into it. So what I'm getting to is, now we're farther down the way with this conflict, and I've seen credible reporting on both sides as to who is militarily holding the upper hand. So I ask you, I'm honestly coming over to the fact that I think Russia may have the upper hand in this conflict right now. Again, militarily. And the reason this is so relevant, and then I really want to hear your answer, is that any negotiation toward a peace is on some level dependent on who has the military upper hand. And I'd suggest that I'm reading more and more credible reports that Russia seems to be in a position of power militarily in this conflict.
I'm not a military expert, but I have done my best as a non-military expert to assess the situation. And here's my opinion for what it's worth. During the past, since the counteroffensive of Ukraine in the summer of 2023, which Professor John Mearsheimer, of a graduate of West Point and a professor at the University of Chicago, has characterized as a catastrophe. It was a catastrophe. Ever since then, Russia has been advancing all along the front line. So there was I'll give you just some of the examples. The Russians took Bakhmut, which was a very, very bloody battle involving the forces of the Russian paramilitaries of Wagner. They took Avdiivka in the southeast of Ukraine, which was arguably the most heavily fortified town in that area. It was a fortress. They took another fortress called Ugledar. That was also a long and bloody battle. They now have currently semi-encircled the linchpin town of Pokrovsk and its sister agglomeration, Konstantinivka. And you can see this not just in the reporting of Russian military bloggers. You can see this in the reporting of Western military. Daniels, Jacques Beau, who's a Swiss intelligence officer, has been talking a lot about this. Scott Ritter, and on. I can name many other Western military experts. And you can see this in the accounts coming from the battlefield by Ukrainians. And even, Julian Rupka, a German journalist who is fanatically pro-Israel, has been, pro-Ukrainian, has been sounding the alarm about the degradation of Ukrainian defenses in Ukraine. Now, quite apart from all of that evidence, let's just look at the balance of forces. Russia has virtually inexhaustible energy supplies, which is very important in a fossil fuel intensive conflict of this nature. Russia has a much larger population. Before the war began, Russia had far more tanks, far more artillery. It has a much bigger military-industrial complex. Western leaders, including officials of NATO, have acknowledged that Russia is outproducing the entirety of NATO when it comes to key components like artillery and artillery systems and tanks. So the idea that Ukraine was going to be able to defeat the Russians in a long-term war of attrition was fantasy. It was utter fantasy. And what we're seeing on the ground is consistent with what a rational observer would expect. I don't discount for one moment the bravery. I'm actually in awe of the bravery and determination of the Ukrainian forces. And I'm sure many of those men don't want to be on the front line. They've been called up and they're doing their duty. Hundreds of thousands have also deserted, by the way, but which is understandable under the circumstances. But this isn't about the caliber of the fighting on the Ukrainian side. At this stage, I'd say they may well have the second best army in the world when it comes to a land war. But the Russians were inevitably going to win this war. And whatever you may think of their justification for sending their forces into Ukraine, the fact of the matter is the longer this war goes on, the more territory Ukraine will lose. It's as simple as that. And these people are dying in vain. Why would you support the prolongation of a war that is going to result in a worse outcome for the Ukrainian people?
It's a fact in general, I think, that Trump wants to have that handshake with Putin that you see there now. He wants to, again, go through the theater of a summit that is designed to make peace the centerpiece, declare mission accomplished, take a victory lap. Where do I pick up my Nobel Peace Prize? The reality on the ground is what you've described. I mean, a gross war of attrition. And that's why Putin, totally intransigent in his conversations with Trump and with the West, is saying, here's my demand. It's never changed. NATO provoked this. And I have the same demands that I had at the beginning of things, as I say, and until you guys come forward, there is no peace. I wonder how this plays out, given the fact that Putin isn't moving off that. And I see Ukraine claiming they're not moving off of their position, which is we want all of this disputed land that you've taken over in the eastern portion of our country. We want you to move back out of that, and we want to return to our pre-conflict borders. I see that as a position that they are ultimately going to modify. I mean, substantially modify. How do you game it out?
I think this is going to be decided on the battlefield, and that Russia is going to destroy Ukraine's military. I'm sorry to say, I think it's tragic and terrible. But
so
that's
you
where
see no negotiated peace at all?
Not at all.
You see a negotiated surrender, in effect.
Correct. It'll get to the point where Russia will be in a position, in my view, to dictate terms of surrender. I want to highlight actually three quickly statements or speeches by administration officials. In February of this year, Pete Hegseth went to the Ukraine contact group in Brussels and told the Europeans, at the same time that Donald Trump was bemoaning how many Ukrainians and Russians are dying, and my God, the flower of their youth is being destroyed needlessly, and on and on. And he said to them, listen, you need to dramatically increase your military spending. You need to buy a lot more weapons, particularly from us, and you need to fund the Ukraine war. This is not a message of peace. And then more recently, J.D. Vance said the same thing in an interview. He put it a little bit more diplomatically. Instead of directing the Europeans to do this, he said, listen, if they want to buy weapons from us and give them to Ukraine, we're okay with that. We got no problem with that. He said that seconds after saying how terrible it was that so many people were dying on the battlefield. And of course, Donald Trump has continued to provide his administration weaponry, battlefield intelligence, and so forth, and has lifted any sanctions against Russia. So what I think is going on is that the Trump administration, Donald Trump sold a fake bill of goods to the American people in the last election. He told them, I'm going to bring this to an end. I'm a peacemaker with these wars. There's a new game in town if you elect me. And now he has a political problem because the policies he actually intended to pursue are radically inconsistent with what he told those voters. So he's setting this up to blame the Europeans and Zelensky for the fact that the war is continuing. He's putting on this big show. I'm bringing Putin to Alaska and I'm rolling out the red carpet, and look how nice I was to Putin. And I said, we're going to do everything to get this done, Vladimir, my good friend Vladimir. And then he brings the vassals over from Europe, because that's what they are. And by the way, I'm not just a Canadian, I'm also a Greek citizen. And it embarrasses me to say that the prime minister of this country and of every EU country today is a vassal of Washington. They just are. So he brought them over and gave them an opportunity to play the role of hawks. We're not, no, we can't do that. We can't surrender an inch of territory to Russia, out of the question. And so he will now be in a position to say, as this all unfolds, to his base, I did what I could, but those crazy Europeans and Zelensky, it's up to them. It's their continent. It's their country. They won't make peace. And so, what can I do? All I can say to you is that I did my best. That's what this is about. I think this is nothing but kabuki theater. And so the war will go on, and ultimately more people will die, more territory will be lost. And at some point, some Ukrainian leader, probably not Zelensky, will have to accept terms of surrender dictated by Russia.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an important point. The one that you snuck in there at the end about Zelensky, Zelensky may not survive this entire thing, well, period, politically or otherwise. I really think what you're saying jives with what I've been saying about Trump. And I think, as usual, there's not a lot of sleight of hand with this administration. I think what you see from Trump is sort of pretty obvious. And so you can see him backing away. Again, he goes through the performative theater of a peace agreement, but you can see him talking in ways that would suggest, hey, it's Zelensky and it's Europe. And that's why I brought them all together. I absolutely concur. He doesn't want the stink of this war on him anymore, and he'll find a way to back away from it. So I do, you and I agree. I think it's sadly, I say sadly because I'd love to see a peace. I'd love to see a brokered peace. I'd love to see us get to some kind of high ground on all of this. And the way in which this administration does this dance, I think kabuki theater is a great way to put it. It just feels It's not even, by the way, good kabuki theater. He calls Putin in the middle of it. I mean, my God, if we were writing that up in a movie or a stage play, you go, no, dude, that's not going to happen. Come on.
I call it a C-grade Hollywood flick. That's what I told.
Another
great
way to put it.
Certainly isn't good kabuki.
In our last few minutes, I want to ask you about Canada. Can I ask you about Canada and just the, it was funny to me that Trump couldn't wait to smack talk Canada. He's an hour into his administration and he just takes on Canada. I couldn't understand it. I still sort of don't understand it, between tariffs and looking at the territory maybe as something that he wanted, like the 51st state, all of that rap. Tell me, as a Canadian, I mean, I understand that, and you're really a Canadian. You've worked within the political system there. You've run for political office. Give me your take and the evolution of your take on Trump and Canada.
Well, this is one of the bees I got in my bonnet, Mark, so I'm going to try to be brief about this. But The bottom line is Canada in many ways already is the 51st state of the United States. I mean, that's just the sad damn reality. And, too few Canadians are willing to live up to it. What basically happened, I remember, when I was in law school, that's when the Canadian government of the day was negotiating NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And there were a lot of people saying that agreement was going to destroy Canada's sovereignty and it was going to basically make Canada an appendage of the United States. And in my view, that's exactly what happened. Those warnings were not heeded. Now, in the mainstream media in Canada, you can't even suggest that we should, bring an end to the trade agreement with the United States or radically modify it in Canada's favor. It's just taken as gospel that this thing absolutely has to be in place. And what has happened, you've seen a hollowing out of Canadian industry. Something like 60+% of our trade is with the United States, which makes us incredibly vulnerable. I think the U.S. Its share of trade with Canada is only about 13 or 15% of the total. So the U.S. could weather a rupture in the trade relationship with Canada much better than we could. So that puts us in an incredibly weak position negotiating with the Americans. And when I ran to be the Green Party leader in 2020, and this was something that was not being said by many people in the country at the time, I said what we should be doing is we should be investing massively in developing the industries that are necessary to maintain the well-being of our population domestically, so that we don't have to rely upon any external sources. But that would have required the government to invest a lot of money in the economy and not rely on the private sector to do the right thing, which I think is a fool's errand. And of course, my warnings weren't heeded. And I authored an op-ed, we have a newspaper called the Hill Times, which is kind of the equivalent of the Hill in the United States. And amazingly, they published an op-ed that I wrote in which I said that we, the Canadians, have hitched their boat to the American Titanic, and we're going down with the big ship. That's exactly what's happening, because the Trump administration, and let's be fair, the Democrats before him were pursuing policies that were not addressing the fundamental problems in the American economy. They seem more interested in spending more and more money in the United States on the military industrial complex than developing civilian infrastructure, addressing the problem of poverty, ensuring that all Americans have health care. All of these issues are going unaddressed. They're becoming worse. And the American elite, not the people, but the American elite are so fixated on maintaining global hegemony that I think ultimately this is going to result in a terrible situation for the United States. I'm sorry to say that to our, my comrades in America, but we're going to suffer along with the U.S. because we have allowed ourselves to become, existentially dependent upon the United States. That's the sad reality. And so when Donald Trump says, I want to make Canada the 51st state, my answer is, well, that already happened, brother. Let's be real here.
But he's ready to open fire with tariffs on Canada. I mean, he may view Canada as, or the de facto reality just might be that Canada is linked to America in such a way that, in a sense, they're the 51st state. But there are a couple of things that Trump sees as adversarial. And so in this weird way, because you're right, a major trading partner, culturally similar, I mean, maybe more than similar, to open fire with tariffs on Canada. I mean, these are like really bruising tariffs. It seemed like a weird flex to me. I didn't get it.
Well, I think he's doing it because he can. And that's all.
Yeah.
That's all there's to it. It's not because I don't think there's any merit to the argument that every country that is in a trade surplus with the United States is somehow screwing the United States. I think that's nonsense. There may be some offenders there, but mostly it's just because there are practical reasons for their trade surplus. Legitimate practical reasons. So whatever his justification may be, he knows that Canada is in an extremely vulnerable position. Its leadership is completely beholden to Washington. We too are led by vassals of Washington, and he can get away with it. And sure enough, that's exactly what our Prime Minister, whom I affectionately refer to as Prime Minister Goldman Sachs, has done. He has allowed the Trump administration to push him around. This character, Mark Carney, who was a well-heeled banker at Goldman Sachs, then became central banker of Canada, then England. He, in this most recent election a few months ago, positioned himself as the man who was going to stand up to Trump. He has capitulated at every step of the way. I'll just give you one example. The Canada had in place, they were going to enact a digital services tax, and the big social media companies in the United States went to the Trump administration, said, it's just going to cost us a few $1 billion. Donald, you got to kill that tax. And so Donald, basically said, if you don't revoke the digital services tax, we aren't going to do a trade deal with you. Within 48 hours, it was gone. 48 hours. Okay. So, that tells you all you need to know about Prime Minister Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. The pay-to-play aspect of most of these billionaires who ascend to political power, it's embarrassing, it's scandalous, and yet it's really, as you suggest, sort of it's the coin of the realm. It's the way business is done now, and it's disturbing. That's why when voices like yours and even parties like yours begin to become ascendant and relevant to political conversation anyway, even if you don't actually win, it matters, But it does feel like the die is cast on some level, at least politically, for a while. Hey, I wish I could talk to you longer. Dimitri, we posted your website at, there it is, DimitriLascaris.org. So those who are just listening to the podcast on Spotify and, iTunes, etc., it's DimitriLascaris.org. And those who are watching on YouTube or going to watch later, we'll have a link to your website under this video. And I really appreciate the time you spent with us. I really look forward to more conversations.
It was great talking to you, Mark. I look forward to it as well. Take care.
All the best. Dimitri Lascaris, everybody. So long, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, this a day where we have David Katz coming through in hour 2. He, the former federal prosecutor, will talk about the huge legal bullet that Donald Trump just dodged. It's going to save Donald Trump about $500 million. We'll get to that as well. Also want to acknowledge a couple of people in the Super Chat and Super Sticker universe. Albert, lead me through the Super Chat and Super Sticker universe. Harry Magnan says, damn it, Mark, starting on time does not work for me. Yeah, we started on time today. I know. It doesn't work for Kim either. Actually, Kim was ready to go, though. She's been here ready to go since 1:24 this morning.
Yeah, I don't know how I got to the point where I wasn't ready to go. I've been here. I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, you are ready to rock, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Chaplain Fred says, I do not know how the press secretary can keep a straight face with those lies and information that distract the whole nation. It makes me sick to my stomach. I hope she has made her peace. Yeah, thank you, Chaplain Fred, for that super chat. I mean, there's the propaganda machine. Once you buy into it, once you are a part of it, that's your job. I'm here to represent the president's view. It may not be my view. This is how you rationalize it. It may not be my view. It may not even be the best thing for the country, but I'm here to represent his view. And so if you're at the White House, that's how you jujitsu yourself to that place. Now, I think she has, that might be the way you or I would jujitsu it. I think she has the kind of true believer status that has her rationalizing and aggressively pursuing on behalf of the president all along the way. So she's not only representing his position aggressively, but she's going after any journalist, and there are very few left. They've reconstituted the press corps, and they have defanged all reasonable media outlets to the point that there aren't a lot of aggressive journalists who even come in contact with her. You're talking about Caroline Leavitt there at the White House, the press secretary. So that those who do still chirp up, you've seen her try to eat them for lunch. Yeah. And so, how dare you ask a question like that? That's the stupidest question. You're fake news. And of course, it's that whole, God, it's just so obnoxious and one-dimensionally ridiculous. And yet it carries the day in this country where there are more and more true believers and then anti-true believers. And we fall into these categories that are very sharply drawn, right? We're in a hyper-partisan environment, is another way to put it. Jim Slayton, I'm confused. Didn't Trump let into the country El Chapo's family? Yeah, it's weird about that, Kim. Isn't that right? Thank you for the $5 super chat. Part of El Chapo's family is in this country. Check this out. Kim will update that. But we have a weird relationship with big money narco cartel related figures. So obviously El Chapo himself, met a bitter end. His wife, I think, also is incarcerated right now. But I do believe Jim's not wrong. There are the El Chapoettes.
Right. Yeah.
The other
El
family
Chapo,
members who are here. Go ahead. Who
El
are
Chapo
they?
family members crossed the U.S. border in an apparent deal with the Trump administration. This published in May on Fox, quote, news, Fox News. But the ex-wife of El Chapo, among 17 family members entering through the San Diego border crossing in what looks like a deal with the Trump administration. They say the family members allowed included Guzman's former wife, Griselda Lopez Perez. So she is here. And the deal made during negotiations between Guzman Lopez and the U.S. government, the family coming to the U.S. because of a negotiation or an offer that the Department of Justice under Trump gave.
Yeah, there you go. I mean,
they are kissing my ass.
The idea that you'd let the El Chapo family in, I don't know. There's probably some pretty good, there's probably some pretty good journalism on that, is what I'm saying. I think if you follow the connective tissue on that story, it's probably pretty good. We can follow up. In fact, I will follow up. I'm just curious. I'd thought that his wife had been indicted, but she may have made another deal. And clearly, he may have been married more than once, too. I don't know. But anyway, one of his wives or the wife apparently got some deal, and now she's just part of the crew that made the deal to come into the country. So
it's supposed to be part of this deal with Bondi. The deal with the family members came the same day that she announced there would be charges filed against top cartel leaders. So perhaps it was for information, unknown. Yeah.
To root out a cartel,
right?
They had to let in a cartel. That's right. That's the deal, right? Trump is just about as useful in this matter as my cat is at anything. He's no peacemaker. He's a crap stirrer, but no peacemaker. Of course, I agree completely. Lady Beatrice, thank you for the $5 super chat. I mean, the idea somehow that there's really a peace being crafted here, there's an absurdity to it. And I think what you're seeing played out, and that's, really why I enjoyed the conversation we just had with Dimitri. I think he just calls it out straight. I mean, there's just the theater of it. It's kabuki theater. So listen to you on KFI yesterday, says, on the folly. Had some KGO flashbacks. Added that station to my favorite list. Oh, there you go. I'm on there again. Today will be my last day this week on KFI. I really do enjoy it over
baby
there.
girl. Don't even play.
Don't even
Yesterday
play, baby.
was National Radio Day, and you were at KFI, and you had a celebratory video that you posted that was super funny. I thought it was great. I don't know. Can we show it? Are we allowed to show it?
I think you're allowed to show. It wasn't a proprietary thing. It comes from, I think it was on Instagram. Do you have it, Albert? You can show it. Yeah, National Radio Day had me, wistfully looking back at my, and everybody mentioned National Radio, and there is the KFI studio. And this is I remember now. I kind of did an over the top. Go ahead, Albert. Sorry.
Radio Day. I don't need to tell you, there's quite a celebration here at iHeartMedia. This is KFI Radio, one of the most listened to stations in the history of the medium. I believe it's the top stream station in the entire iHeart family. Let's take a look at the rest of the family. Here's the sports station. The Dodgers have a live broadcast going on right now. The celebration for National Radio Day has probably taken the people out of the studio to some large celebration. Let's check this studio. As I say, normally there'd be a lot of activity, but here on National Radio Day, we're all lost in the kind of contemplation and reflection.
We're all on automation.
Superstar newsman Michael Crozier.
Hi, Mark Thompson. Happy National Radio Day.
And happy National Radio Day to you too.
We all celebrate together.
Woohoo!
Yeah, there you go. It was that's the over the top. Yeah, it's funny. Radio's different now, and I'll say that sadly, radio's going away. I'll just state it to you flat out. I mean, I can say it here. Radio's going away. Now, it's just going to take on a different form. It's going to probably exist on streaming like iHeartMedia does. You'll be able to stream it. And that's why I love people who are kind of getting used to streaming maybe this show and other shows like it or podcasts or whatever. But you can see how media has become sort of sloshed together. And it's a huge loss. It's absolutely a huge loss because the configuration of so many of these radio stations with news departments and with service to the community, with expectations of around information and expectations of a kind of link to the community that so many radio stations had, that's gone. That's going away. You find it maybe in bigger markets generally, but the smaller markets, those radio stations are bought up as big purchases by huge conglomerates. That's what happened with KGO Radio in San Francisco. This is a huge station, KGO, a giant signal, giant impact on the Bay Area and on Northern and Central California and and all over the West for that matter. It's a legendary station and real service to the community. And little by little, the realities of ad-supported media like that, legacy media, just took it over and started to not be able to support these things that I talk about, the infrastructure associated with the news department, with hosts that really know what they're talking about, with producers like Albert, with news people like Kim. You just couldn't do it. There wasn't enough money. And so what do? The same thing that's happening across America at radio stations. They just run syndicated stuff. Yeah. There's a studio in wherever where the host is talking and that show is carried across 120, 240 stations, whatever it may be. It's Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or one of these kinds of people who have a radio life in addition to a TV life on Fox Channel. And by the way, the Fox audience makes up a lot of the talk radio audience. There's a lot of right-wing listeners. Now, I like talk radio. So for me, and I love radio. I like to listen. But we are being edged out by a new generation that doesn't have that connection that we have. So there's a certain bittersweet quality to National Radio Day, which was yesterday. I guess that's what I'm saying. And even the music stations will find themselves dealing with some of the same stuff. So you can program your own music station, right? You can do it through Apple Music. There's literally a button you press on Apple Music and they start bringing you all of the current hits. You can ask for hip hop hits. You can ask for a mix of the two with a little bit of, R&B thrown in, whatever you want. So if you're into music, Spotify lets you create your own mix. YouTube Music lets you do that. You can create your own mix of curated stuff that you like to listen to. All of these things have helped destroy radio. And so the idea that curated mix, which is done by a music director and a program director, and the mix of music and talk, which is carefully balanced, It's all going away. It's all going away. There's just not the money. So, anyway, you hear me, Mark? Says John Powell. I don't know what that's in reference to, but yeah, I hear you, John. So glad you're on board. I don't know what that's about, but I'm sure it was fun. All right, let's move on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let's quickly. Let me. Where am I going here, Kim? You are.
Would you like some news?
Hang on a second before I get to news. I wanted to make sure you'll get to JD Vance getting booed.
Oh no, let's do it right now.
Okay, let me just quickly talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C.
The Mark Thompson Show.
JD Vance, who may be your next president of the United States, he was booed. I believe it was at a burger place, wasn't it?
I think he was giving burgers away to the National Guard troops, right?
Yeah. I thought we touched on this the other day, but it's always worth touching on it again. He was down there at that Union Station.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's visiting the troops. Again, a lot of this stuff is really just, I get tired of using the word, but it's just true, performative, you know. And to be fair, a lot of politics is performative, you know. How come a high-placed official, governor, mayor, president, vice president shows up at some, you know, unveiling of a new children's center that's going to go up, and then they have a shovel in their hand, and that's all performance, but that's also symbolism that's important. So in this case, the symbolism is I'm supporting the troops, I'm going to Union Station, I'm giving them these burgers, and he had to leave the area quickly. There were so many protesters. They were yelling at J.D. Vance and his crew. They were yelling, "Free D.C., free D.C., from D.C. to Palestine, occupation is a crime." And the Hegseth message was, we brought some law and order back to Washington, D.C. I love that. Again, it's just theater. But that's what was happening at Union Station, and they had to beat a quick exit, you know. A supermajority of Washingtonian residents opposing Trump's takeover, according to the latest poll. I mean, that's no surprise. First of all, it's an insanely blue area, the District of Columbia. But also, who wants troops occupying their city? 79% of residents either somewhat or strongly oppose the efforts, compared to just 17% who back it. So when you hear, I'm kind of glad there are troops on the street, you know, et cetera, people relating those stories, really? Can't find too many people. It seems like overwhelmingly people are against it. And if you talk to restaurant owners there, they will tell you their business, as we reported the other day, is down massively, over 50%. We were talking about just reservations in the Washington, D.C. area month to month through Open Table. They're down 31%. And restaurants are already struggling, as you know, out of COVID, et cetera. The Pentagon asking civilian employees to join a volunteer force to aid in ICE deportations. Selected employees will join Trump's mass deportation campaign and offer critical support to ICE operations. They're looking for civilian employees at the Pentagon to join this ICE operation. They posted a job listing requesting volunteers from civilian federal employees for a volunteer force, as it's called, supporting ICE.
So do you do that at lunch, at your lunch hour, or on your break time, on the weekends, or is it, do you just take a temporary reassignment to ICE?
It's such the amount of money and resources and attention that they're paying to this problem that doesn't exist. So you need more people to go to Home Depot for you. You need more people to go to my car wash for you. You need more people to go to the elementary school for you so you can deport the mom dropping off her child. It's so gross. Why would you want that stink on you, the shame on you? I get it. Southern border. I agreed. Problem solved. The problem isn't the day workers at Home Depot. The problem isn't the tireless construction workers working to build new housing. That isn't the problem in America. It isn't a problem that tomato pickers need to be deported. That's not a problem. That's not a goal. The southern border. But what's going to happen is, and it's already happening, you're going to turn the American economy on its side because of this. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying yesterday the entire wall along the U.S.-Mexico border is going to be painted hot pink, everybody. Yep.
What?
Hot pink. They want to lure those illegals in, and then we're going to bust them. She wants it painted black to make it hotter.
Isn't that a Rolling Stone song?
Painted black. That's right. Wow. Very strong, Kim. It was specifically at the request of President Trump that the wall be painted black so it's too hot to hold on to, because there are no gloves or boots that could possibly withstand a black wall.
Sorry, Mark. That wall's black. I can't climb it.
Here's what they said when the president suggested that. Oh, my God, sir, that's genius. Absolutely terrific. That's exactly what we're going to do. Why didn't anybody else come up with that suggestion? Thank you so much, Mr. President.
They are kissing my ass.
All right.
Little black paint, little black duct tape. Good to go.
Tulsi Gabbard cutting the National Intelligence staff by 40%. She really got the memo, huh? Tulsi Gabbard got the memo. She's slinging the crap like nobody's business.
When you don't have to rely on real data and you're making up the stuff you want to make up anyway, you don't really need the staff members to do the job, right? Because you can make up whatever stories you want to make up. So, you know, why would you need people to investigate and look into what's really happening in the world?
The latest made up stuff is associated with pulling the security clearances and the top secret clearances. Not all of them are top secret, but I'll just say the clearances of so many associated with the DNI. So she, as director of national intelligence, looks at this crew that she has control over and says, I can pull these clearances here. And she's doing it, she's saying, because they've compromised national security for political reasons. No proof is offered, no evidence, nothing. In fact, I had a little bit of an interview with Albert. You have that with one of the guys who was let go. He had his security clearance pulled. I think he's still there, but he has no security clearance. In any case, his position was, this is crazy. I mean, this is the crew that communicates on the Signal chat on their iPhone about major troop movements and military operations. This is absurd. These are the guys who are complaining that people are compromising intelligence based on political affiliations. Play a little bit of it, if you would, please, Albert.
This morning, the Trump administration slashing a key intel office. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard announcing she'll cut her own office's staff by 40%, calling it bloated and inefficient. That just after she revoked the security clearances of dozens of current and former national security officials. Gabbard says they politicized intelligence and failed to protect classified information. But critics say it's just political retaliation from President Trump, with one former intel official describing the indiscriminate list as a, quote, drive-by shooting. And former CIA Director Bill Burns saying it's about breaking people and paralyzing public servants. Our next guest is one of those officials who had their clearances revoked. It's Army veteran and former CIA officer Joel Willett, who joins us now. He served on the National Security Council during the Obama administration. Joel, thank you for joining us. Gabbard says that you and others on this list manipulated or leaked classified intelligence. I want to give you a chance now to respond to that.
Thank you for having me, Ali. I think that's a rich accusation coming from the administration that, conducts military operations via their iPhone apps and things like Signal, first and foremost. Second, I did not have access to classified information in 2019, which is the year that I signed a letter saying that Trump's behavior on a call with President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine was highly inappropriate. I was 4 years removed from my time in government, had no security clearance, had no access to classified information during that time. So that's a lie from the director. But I think the comment that you shared about it just being an indiscriminate drive-by shooting is correct. I think this administration doesn't do its homework, and its cruelty is matched only by its incompetence.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, who can disagree with that? I mean, no one in this administration does their homework on anything, and they're a complete sloppy mess, and they're wasteful as well as reckless. And so I guess that guy is, no longer in the game. But pretty wild to see what's happening with Tulsi Gabbard. She's really leaning in. And then she pitches it as a waste, fraud, and abuse thing. That's the way they dismantled government in the first 2 months. They pitch everything as waste, fraud, and abuse. But, interesting, they never touched the Pentagon. The most wasteful institution in American history. Not only don't they touch it, they give it more money. Crazy. All under the control of our darling Pete Hegseth. All right, I've got David Katz coming up. I just want to again, I'm wearing my Born to Peacefully Resist t-shirt. I know many of you are thinking, how can I get an attractive t-shirt just like Uncle Mark? At getmarkmerch.com. There it is. Albert has it for you now, and there are a number of throwback designs. Make love, not fascism, is a favorite of mine. Kind of a ladies' design, like a ladies' tee sort of thing. And there is Project, I like this one. Maybe people have to think about this too much. Project 1984 and a half, 1984.5. It's the Orwellian reference.
Oh, the green color's cute.
Yeah, there are some different colors that are really nice. I think Courtney spent a lot of time on these designs. I hope you like them, and always open to feedback. And she's, she's got a full-time job. She still helps out with this. It's really, really cool.
Really nice.
Yeah. And, in her frustrated moment, she goes, somebody else is going to have to do this. We're going to have to hire somebody to do this. I say, well, we don't have any money to hire anybody, so I don't know how we're going to do that. But anyway, Born to Peacefully Resist. I love that with the globe. I'll probably wear that tomorrow. And really, really cool. And I love the different colors and all the different stuff. So it's getmarkmerch.com if you want to rock it, and check it out. There's a lot of good stuff there. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim, I'm waiting on David Katz until he gets here. Do you want to give me some news?
I can do that.
You'll have to be prepared to hit the ejector seat when he arrives. But
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Smash the like button.
Smash
Meantime,
it
thank
with
you.
your iron rod.
It helps us in the YouTube universe when you hit the like button. That's why it's important. That's why every YouTube creator says it, because the more likes you have, the more likely that this show, for example, could end up in somebody's feed who doesn't even know it exists. So that's, if you derive any pleasure or any information or whatever community from this show, please do hit the like button. It does help us.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. You got to do it. Do it hard. You know what I'm saying? Kim's News and David Katz next.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Trump plans to patrol the streets of the nation's capital tonight alongside law enforcement. He's going on a ride-along, Mark. In an interview, Trump said, "I'm going to be out tonight, I think, with the police and with the military in Washington, D.C." This comes after Trump ordered a federal takeover of the city's police as part of this so-called crackdown on crime. A White House official said the details are still being ironed out as far as how does that work? Does the Secret Service have to, trail the police? Do you have Secret Service members in the police vehicle?
It's the photo op presidency. It's what he wants. He participates with his two favorite flexes, cops and the military, and they establish a route ahead of time. The Secret Service dry cleans that route. They approve it. And then he goes out, takes a bunch of pictures. This is the same kind of thing that Dr. Phil did when he went out with ICE. In this case, it's, Donald Trump and the other superheroes he's assembled to go out and, reestablish order to D.C., which has lost its way.
Shall I continue with news, or would you like to go straight to David Katz?
I've got to take on Katz because I have a deadline, but I loved that story. If you could only do one story.
That was a pretty good one.
That was a very good one to do.
That was a pretty good one. I'll put a pin in this news. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Check it out.
I do want to mention Coachella Valley Coffee because I am having it right now, and it is so. In fact, today,
delicious.
I went with a sunrise blend today at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You know, usually I've been into the clarity blend in a really big way, but there's my sunrise blend, and man, I love it. I think I've had like almost 3 cups of this sunrise blend, 3 big heaping cups of sunrise blend. So it's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Go there. There are tasting profiles under every coffee and tea, so you know what you're getting. And when you check out, use our code MARKT for 10% off. Again, 10% off everything on the site. MARKT at checkout. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am, I'll get to Katz here. Mark Robinson with a $99.99. That's $100 where I come from. A super chat. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm not going to cry over $100.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
But I think that is cryable. And look at this, a big wet kiss for Kim. For the true operator of the show, Kim. Kim, vote for Kim. Sorry, Mark, maybe next time. Wow. Kim, somebody really adores you. And it's Mark Robinson, a Mark, turning on another Mark. It's a sad day, man. It's a sad day. But I applaud you for contributing to the show and help that you're providing to keep us going. Thank you, Mark Robinson.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is the former federal prosecutor, now a defense lawyer. I think he's one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. You hear him on London radio if you're over that way. You see him on the BBC if you're over that way. And you know him from News Nation. I think he has a regular spot now, you know, on the weekends there. That is to say, he's brought in as a political analyst. And Fox News Channel, et cetera. I just remind you because I feel so lucky that he spends time with us and he squeezes us in between these other obligations. He is the great David Katz, everyone. Look at you, the former federal prosecutor. You're still there in your legal office, surrounded by your diplomas and your smart stuff.
Great to be with you, Mark. You know, your Katzadamus, which was so innovative, has now given way to like artists in your audience competing, displaying their work, and including a former Disney illustrator. And you have to see this. You have to see this. Can you zoom in on it?
We can. There you go. Hold it up a little higher. Holy cow. Hold up a little higher. Oh my God. And now just in front of you. Yeah.
That's
wow. That's awesome. Oh my God.
Fantastic, huh?
That is really, hold it up a little higher, and then over to your right. Your right. Bring it to your right. There you go. I love that. That takes Katzadamus to another level. Albert, where's the Katzadamus that we post? Do you have it? The Katzadamus pic that we post, Albert. But I think that runs maybe edging out the one that we post.
Well, it's not a matter of who finishes first. It's everybody's creative expression. And Mark, you know, it's not about me. I hope that this Katzadamus becomes a symbol for optimism, predicting and being optimistic about the end of Trump, the end of Trumpism, and seeing a positive future ahead of us, which I think we really are going to have. I think that Trump is really played out, and so that's my view of it. But
there's the Katzadamus picture that
it was. Here we go.
Was the first one, and there's the new one offered by Katz. That's a happier Katzadamus. You're smiling. Katzadamus is smiling in the one that you're showing. So.
You see? It shows that optimism,
yes.
That path forward. Look at what Governor Newsom just did. We didn't lay down. We fought fire with fire. And, you know, if they want to push us around, guess what? Those days are over of pushing Democrats around, of Democrats being okay with, like the good government in the abstract, the universal disarmament. We're not universally disarmed. You look at the outrages coming out of Texas, and no, we're not just going to sit there in a year and a half and say, oh, I guess we lost the House, but we sure did it by the rules of Robert's order. No, no, no. What he's doing is terrific, Governor Newsom. And by the way, the California Supreme Court just said that he could proceed. And I think they're going to make the decision today to put it on the November ballot. So everybody remember, this is the one we don't want to do this. But we've really been forced into it. Trump told Texas to do this. Texas is following lockstep, Mark. And California, we have to either respond or we have to roll over and say, well, okay, Trump and Vance or whoever will be in charge of the government for the next decade in both houses of Congress and appoint judge after judge. And we're just going to sit there and spout niceties about good government? No, no, no.
So, David, let me just follow up on that, because you do have, of course, a sunnier disposition toward all of this than do I. I mean, you also know more than do I. So let me just ask you about this political lift that Newsom has to do. You're already skipping ahead of the movie to where we have answered the Texas redistricting with California redistricting, but there is some political real estate between here and there. And so Newsom will have to get a green light from voters to actually go ahead with this, won't he?
That's right. It's in our Constitution. And I saw somebody who I thought was pretty dim-witted on CNN just say over and over again, oh, the governor is violating the constitutional rights of Republicans in this state. That's nonsense. We're allowed to amend the Constitution. And what we would do in November, if this is voted in, is it would amend the Constitution. It would, for a short time, get rid of the independent commissions. The independent commissions are very nice, just like not having nuclear missiles is very nice. But it's ridiculous to not be so nice as to not have nuclear missiles when people are shooting them at you and you unilaterally disarm. So we're not unilaterally disarming, but this has a trigger mark that only goes into effect if Texas or some other red state does it. All they have to do in Texas, and probably Florida is the other state that's really at risk of doing this, maybe Missouri. All those three states have to do is to basically stand down. Ours will not go into effect no matter how overwhelming the vote is for it. But I have to believe just about every Democrat and independent who cares about not having Trump bully us will vote for it, because there's no alternative. I haven't heard one commentator yet say, what's the alternative except, oh, it somehow violates the Constitution and we agreed to a commission a few years ago and we should have an independent, fair commission. Yeah, so should Texas, so should Missouri and Florida. But if they keep pushing us and bullying us, no, we're not just going to be pushed and bullied here in California. It affects the entire House. That's the thing, Mark. This decision in California or that decision in Texas that would go first and hurt us, it affects the entire nation, because the House is right now 3 votes away from being Democratic. And by every trend, it would go Democratic in the next election, in the midterm election. And that's what Trump so much wants to avoid, because then it would be a check on his power and the arbitrary things that he's doing.
Well, I mean, they have passed this congressional map. They did it last night. And I'm wondering, it's interesting. I think I sent it to you, Albert. You have the Obama, he kind of summarizes in a way the way Katz does, the Obama post on X about the problem with doing this, but understanding the urgency of having to do this, which is essentially what you're saying. And I just mentioned Obama because here it is. Thank you, Albert. He says, over the long term, I have trouble reading this because it's so small on my screen, but hang on one second. I'll just, over the long term, we shouldn't have political gerrymandering in America. And he's saying just a fair fight between Republicans and Democrats based on who's got better ideas. But since Texas is taking direction from a partisan White House and gerrymandering in the middle of a decade to try and maintain the House despite their unpopular policies, I have tremendous respect for how Governor Newsom has approached this. He's put forward a smart, measured approach in California designed to address a very particular problem at a very particular moment in time. And so that's, in essence, what you're saying, which is we want to play by the rules, but if you're not going to play by the rules, then we'll try to play by the same reimagined rules that you're playing by. And that's what's happening in California.
It's countervailing. It's reciprocal, and will never go into effect, even if it gets a huge vote. I think it only has to win by a majority, and it seems to me pretty inevitable it'll win by a majority. Now, some people may say, well, is it really going to work? Because maybe other Republican states will do what Texas is doing. And that's what my comment was, that there's a risk of it happening in Florida. There's a risk in Missouri, very red states where they can pretty much control everything. And Indiana has already said it does not want to do it, although Indiana Republicans control the state. Indiana has, desisted from doing this or said it will desist. That's a great trend. And then if it actually comes down to that, all three states do it to us, and the other states blue states can see that we're not countervailing it, then New York and Illinois can do this more readily than we can, because we have this constitutional provision right now in the California Constitution that sets up these commissions. And of course, that was a real good government thing. That was all a very nice idea. But it has to be suspended for a while because we're just getting pushed around. It's become unilateral disarmament, and we just can't have that. It's just totally not fair. And you look at what Trump is doing. Let me just make one more comment. He's now really getting into Banana Republic stuff. I mean, he's going after his enemies for so-called mortgage fraud, which is garbage. It's a lie. But he's just letting the world know that he's got an FBI director and an attorney general who will go after his enemies for really small potato stuff that even if it were so, would not be handled by a federal criminal prosecution. So it's like, as you said before, Mark, many times, they said, for my friends, everything goes. For my enemies, the law. And this idea that I've had mortgage fraud cases that I've defended, somebody who buys 5 or 6 properties and is playing, real games to get lower rates. None of these enemies of Trump, and none of these public officials are doing anything like that. So under the guidelines, the federal prosecutive guidelines, none of these people would be investigated for more than, the FBI kind of looking at the documents and saying, no, that's, even if that were so, it's so far from our guidelines. It's such small change. But if you go after those people, I'm even suspicious that those New York Court of Appeals judges have all the respect in the world for judges. But you wonder, if they're scared, because once a president has been this dictatorial and vindictive and said he's going to go after, jaywalking, everybody says, you know what, maybe I did jaywalk. I don't need this. And that's how you get an autocracy, Mark.
Well, that's exactly what I've been saying all along. And I think even in the case to which you've alluded, which is the mortgage thing, which is associated with somebody who's on the Federal Reserve Board, the idea is twofold, I'd suggest. One is you're literally trying to harass her to the point that she resigns, and you're, pressuring her, leaning on her so that you can replace her with one of your own. But then you're also sending a message, and that's kind of what you're saying. And you're sending a message, I made this point yesterday on the air, to the Fed chairman even, saying, dude, I'm not messing around. I'm going after her now, and I can come after you too. You'll play ball, you'll all play ball, or I will ruin your life, and you'll wish you had never come to government. I think that's the message. It's a mafia kind of set. It's a mobster mentality.
Well, I've been saying this, and so have some other criminal defense attorneys for a long time, that because selective prosecution is not treated in the federal courts the way it ought to be, it's very hard to get discovery. It's very hard to even make that claim that you've been selectively prosecuted. And, all the time the Democrats were in power and they didn't really grill nominees to see what their views were on this. Now, unfortunately, those chickens are coming home to roost, that the law on selective prosecution is really bad. Now, Trump may make it easy for them because he makes such stupid statements. Now he's basically said, I'm going after this person. He's giving a lot of evidence. You don't need the discovery, which is very circumscribed by legal doctrines in the federal courts, unfortunately. You don't need the discoveries to find out that, hey, somebody's really trying to get you. Trump announces to the world, I'm trying to get this guy. So that may help them with their selective prosecution. I got to believe if they ever brought charges against Senator Adam Schiff, that any federal judge in America would see that this was selective prosecution, that this is a case that doesn't even have to go to trial because he's been so, selectively prosecuted, so chosen because of his opposition to Trump. I believe that even the Trumpy judges, even the Trump selected judges, I just have that much confidence in the federal courts, Mark.
Yeah, well, you've had a lot of experience with the federal courts, so maybe that confidence is what we all should have. I'm far more cynical, but I did want to mention, because you did mention it, how this appeals court threw out, this just happened this morning, this financial penalty, right? The state judge in New York had posted, I should say, should impose this penalty, and it was a lot of money. They upheld the fraud judgment that involved Trump exaggerating his wealth for decades, but the legal judgment that would have brought down this $500 million fine, that is waived in the appellate court. And I think you were saying, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. I think you were saying, was there a sense that there was a bit of intimidation here, or was there a real legal judgment here that determined, hey, that's an excessive fine?
Well, I have all the respect in the world for judges. And these are the intermediate appellate judges. It's very complicated how the courts are named in New York. There's a superior court, which is the trial court. It's superior to all the municipal courts, so the traffic courts. So the superior court is the trial court. Then there's an intermediate appellate court. And then there's the Court of Appeals, which is the Supreme Court. You'll never figure it out. It'll never matter. So these are the intermediate. It has not gone to the highest state court in New York. It still is going to go there. Probably now on the appeal of both of them. But I guess the point that I'm making is they're human beings, okay? They have all kinds of things that they're doing in life. They have things that their kids are doing in life. And just let's look at it from human nature, whether you're a judge, have a black robe or not, okay? You've done anything wrong in life, okay? You have a right to go on with your life. I mean, that's the reality. People have done a little of this, a little of that. I mean, everyone wants to be Caesar's wife, but you say to yourself, wow, this is unbelievable. This guy's coming after, they're coming after Adam Schiff for something which is so frivolous. The idea that they would never come after me because, they've gotten so much pushback on going after a U.S. senator who hasn't done anything. I don't know. I think it's very, very intimidating because I don't think that decision squares up under the law. Those seem to me like judges who are really worried about affirming this $500 million judgment against Trump, because it seemed to me very, very strong. And can we go over the case just really quickly? Sure. So this is the one. Now people get this all confused because it's a civil case, and they remember the civil case where he also had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to this E. Jean Carroll. This is the one that he assaulted in the dressing room at Bergdorf Goodman's. And then even after he lost, then he blasted her again. So she had a second complaint against him, and she won even more money on that. So that's hundreds of millions of dollars. And that one is still up on appeal. It's not all those cases with E. Jean Carroll and the sexual assault and the defamation of her. These are the ones where, as you said, for decades, he does a couple of things with the Trump properties. He says they're worth a lot more than they're really worth when he goes to banks. And they said, look, you got $550 million less of loan payments. If you'd have borrowed $2 billion, as you did, let's say it was $2 billion, at the rate they would have charged you had you told the truth, that's $500 million more than the rates that you actually got. So by saying you and I get together, Mark, let's say, and we say, okay, we're going to find some real estate and we're going to tell people that it's worth $2 billion and it's not, okay? Two things could happen. We could just about destroy that bank as we went down, right? Or we could get very lucky and the real estate could go up because it was in Manhattan and it ended up going up. So Trump's defense is that nobody lost anything. Mark, that is not a legal defense. If you and I take a bunch of worthless properties and say they're worth $2 billion, or cheap properties, and we say they're worth $2 billion, and we have the very good fortune that they go up to $3 billion, we've still committed at least a civil tort, if not a crime. That is what this judge said. Trump could have asked for a jury trial. He didn't want a jury trial when he says, oh, I got railroaded by some judge. He could have chosen a jury trial. He didn't want a jury trial in New York City on this. The evidence was so absolutely clear. He went to a judge. That was this Goron. He thought that was going to help him out. This is the famous one where he says that his apartment is 3 times the physical size that it is and says it's his opinion. No, it's not an opinion when you tell somebody something is 3 times as large geographically as it is. So he overstated all those things. He got much better loan rates. The banks would have charged him $500 million more had he told the truth. The judge said, that's why you owe $500 million. And then the Court of Appeals, this intermediate Court of Appeals, just threw all that out. and said, the banks didn't lose money. It was speculative. There wasn't enough evidence for it. And again, I'd like to really analyze it closely. It just happened today, but it just seems to me like it's wrongly decided. Now, other than that, though, they did say that he was good for fraud. So they upheld the fact that he and his sons were found liable for fraud. It's a civil case, found liable for fraud. And they put a monitor in there to make sure that they didn't keep doing these same sleazy things that were civilly wrong. The monitor's still there. There's still the liability for fraud. So you can still say that they are fraudsters. Smart to add civil fraudsters, but they're still fraudsters. And so they're both going to appeal. And they had nothing nice to say about, it was her name, the attorney general there, Letitia James, that she made comments she shouldn't have made, that she was going to get Trump when she ran. Now, it's so mind-boggling. And the reason I think that these judges are scared of Trump is because it would have been so logical to say, while we condemn the remark that she made during her electoral campaign, the court feels constrained to point out that Trump has made comments 20 times as worse, 20 times more often. If that kind of language is not in there, it looks like an opinion that's designed to get, you know, from Trump's point of view, he doesn't like to be called a fraudster, but he really doesn't like to be ordered to pay $500 million. And if you remember this, he was just about insolvent, Mark, when he was out of office. Do you remember this? He had to run around and post a bond that was about the amount of, so he had to go get somebody to, he had to pay $500 million, or he had to have somebody to basically say that if he never did pay the $500 million, they would pay the $500 million. It's incredibly hard to get a surety like that. And it looked like even Trump, because he was out of office, he couldn't give all those favors he gives now that the U.S. Supreme Court says he has presidential immunity for. He couldn't give all those favors then because he was in office and he really couldn't raise the money. And then the Court of Appeals bailed him out again. They're supposed to all be Democrats, but they bailed him out again because they said, you don't have to post that much. You have to post only, let's say, 100 million. And then he found somebody. I wonder what that person's fate has been now since they did that big favor for Trump and now he's president again. But anyway, some angel came forth with $100 million. He posted that $100 million. And here we are. It's so depressing, Mark. That's why I showed the happy Katz, because it's really depressing. I mean, what happened to the rule of law?
No, I mean, that's exactly it. And I think you're finding that the rule of law is intimidated, and the sort of mobster way of doing business is an effective way to strong arm everything from senators and congresspeople who've been cowed by Trump to judges who you expect to operate in and above a lot of this political partisanship. But they, as you suggest, have real lives and families too. A U.S. judge saying yesterday that the Trump administration is actually in a better position than federal courts to release materials that would satisfy public curiosity about the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in the sex trafficking case. The Justice Department had made a bid to unseal records from the grand jury that indicted Epstein in 2019. And so there, U.S. District Judge Richard Berman wrote, it was about 70 pages of materials that the grand jury had. I mean, that is specifically relevant because the judge noted that there are 100,000 pages that the government has from its Epstein investigation. So the idea that the 70-odd pages that are part of this grand jury investigation and grand jury testimony, that ain't treasure trove for Epstein. The feds have the treasure trove for Epstein. That's really what the judge has said. So there was never really, as you had indicated, David Katz, any notion realistically that grand jury was that grand jury testimony or other details from the grand jury was really going to get out, was really going to be unsealed. But that was the dance they were doing to address the Epstein bleeding at the time that was going on, the demand for the Epstein files. But now, even in passing on this, where the judge says, no, we're not going to release these, he's going, dude, I don't have a lot of these anyway. Most of the files are there with the U.S. government.
Well, you know, this is a federal judge who did this. Now, of course, you know, a vindictive, lawless administration could go after, you know, picayune things against federal judges just as state judges. There's no immunity. You know, a federal judge can get a parking ticket. A federal judge can get a speeding ticket. A federal judge can be investigated for absolute nonsense by a vindictive attorney general. We haven't really had that. And by the way, when I talk about fighting fire with fire, I just meant for this particular ballot initiative that I think everyone should vote for in November. We're never going to fight fire by fire, Democrats and people who believe in the rule of law, by doing this to the Republicans or Republican judges or Republican political enemies when Democrats are back in power. You never get down to this level. That's not what I mean by fighting fire with fire. Now, this particular one, Mark, is so disingenuous. It's so stupid. You're right. Rome was burning. Washington was burning. Even MAGA was burning with this demand to get the Epstein files. And of course, Trump had all the power to give the Epstein files. And these people like Bongino, he made a career out of, I guess, working out and going on podcasts and screaming and yelling that the Epstein files, we're going to nail all these Democrats, all these rich elite Democrats. Oh my God, all they do is they run around and they sex trafficking. And then, of course, all of a sudden, Trump's in power. And it's like, ooh, that was an interesting rhetorical point. But, ooh, because they said, Mark, I think there's more than 100,000 pages because they.
Oh, my God, yes. But that's what he said, 100,000.
Yeah, hundreds of FBI agents. You wonder if they're fighting terrorism. You wonder if some huge fraud, some cyber attacks against America are being handled by the FBI, wiretaps against real organized criminals who murder people to keep them silent. You wonder if the FBI is working on them. Well, you won't be surprised to learn that the FBI was all detailed to Washington, D.C. to go over hour after hour and day after day the Epstein files. You wonder for what reason? And apparently it was to see how often Trump's name was in there, how badly Trump was portrayed in there, how badly his big friends and big donors were portrayed in there. And when he got done doing that, we know that the attorney general said, no, we're not releasing anything. Bongino supposedly went crazy. There's now a second person running the FBI along with him. He's probably going to get phased out. He'll go back on his podcast. He'll make more money than he did in government, but he won't have that kind of sway that he has right now, of course. So it was always ridiculous. They had to come up with something. And the story they did was, well, we'll have the grand jury transcripts released, which had all these wonderful things about it. It was likely not to work, but it sounded good to the average person who thought, yeah, they're doing something. They're getting the grand jury, the secret stuff they're getting released. The grand jury is secret because they talk about people who are innocent in there. But it's not because it's a great source of information. The government has to believe when they present a case to a federal grand jury that they can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But the legal standard is just probable cause. So what they normally do is they call an agent. And that's what this was. The whole grand jury thing that Trump and Bondi made such a big deal about was nothing but an FBI agent testifying from hearsay. So he says, we've done some investigation. There's this Epstein Island. There's allegations that there was sex with young women down there. We have these flight logs. Trump was on the plane 7 times, maybe if it went to that level of detail. But he didn't go to Epstein Island. He didn't even maybe interview any of these people. He didn't even see the records that Trump had been on the Epstein plane 7 times. What he testified to was just hearsay, a summary of the case, and then the grand jury voted the indictment. And then, of course, there was these hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of pages of files that should have been turned over to the defense. And the other thing about Maxwell, we haven't heard about her in a while, but it's obvious that she tailored her story in a way that to get a pardon, because the only thing good that can happen to her, because I do predict this next month that the U.S. Supreme Court will not grant review of her case. Even if they granted review of her case, it's a losing argument. You know, Epstein had immunity in one place. Even if the immunity extended to Maxwell in that one place, Southern District of Florida, she wasn't indicted in that place. So whatever protection she had only in the District of Florida, derivatively from Epstein, she didn't have in New York because New York ain't the District of Florida. So that case is going nowhere. So her only hope of getting out of her 20-year prison sentence for sexually trafficking young girls is to have Trump give her a pardon. Now, people say Trump will never give her a pardon or a commutation. Katz predicts that probably, depending how the case rolls, but I can absolutely see that happening. She'll hold a press conference. She'll say, my God, I knew about all these Democrats. That's why I didn't want to say during the Democrats. I knew the Democrats and Biden weren't going to, because it all was against them. And Trump will say, oh my God, I predicted this woman. I saved this woman from being railroaded and spending all these further years in prison. This is all part of a Biden, conspiracy. If they'd have really had this great stuff against me, they would have released it. And let me just say this, they wouldn't have released it. These guys like Biden and his U.S. attorney and the assistant U.S. attorneys play by the rules. They don't leak stuff. I never leak stuff. There was never a leak investigation in my office. All the years that I was there in the U.S. attorney's office, you play by the rules. Nobody leaks anything. Those grand jury transcripts that are so secret, I never heard of anybody. I'm sure there's some case in America, but not in our office. I never heard of anybody leaking one word of a grand jury transcript. So it's very logical. None of it leaked under Biden, and now it's going to all be packaged in a way to get her a commutation. That is, unfortunately, people say he'll never ever do that. These were young girls. They were hurt so terribly. If it helps him, Trump will do it.
Oh, couldn't agree more. This pardon is coming already. You've seen insane amounts of, immediately following the Blanche meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell, I mean, immediately following. I think it was a day later. They move her to this super minimum security facility that is one that no other person, inmate, convicted of sex offenses of any kind is permitted to occupy. She is immediately, again, the ink isn't even dry on whatever deal. She's immediately transferred there, and now she's on like a work release program, or she's on like a, right? It's crazy. I mean, it was so clearly a deal crafted in that moment by Todd Blanche on behalf of Trump.
It's a security level. Someone serving a 20-year sentence and she has about 15 years left to go is generally not put in a camp just because, they could just, a lot of them, you don't even have to go over a wall. I mean,
no, you can walk right off. That's exactly right.
Right. They say that when Milken or somebody else was out here at Lompoc, they had a bicycle and they went into town.
No, I've talked to people. I've talked to people who
that far away, right?
I've talked to you've met with people. I've talked to people who've served time in these specific facilities, and they talk about the fact that you can walk right off if you want to. I mean, it's not smart to do that because they will come get you and they'll rearrest you, and then you're going to be upgraded to a more medium security place. But that's the nature of the place. It's far more. It's called a camp for a reason. And anyway, she was moved there. And it even cost the American taxpayers more money because they had to apparently increase the amount of security associated with Maxwell's stay there. It's clearly a deal. And so this is my long way of agreeing with you that she will be pardoned at the end of all of this when Trump won't care whether or not there's a hostile reaction or whatever. He's, the cake on that will have been baked. I need to ask you, the DOJ trying to get names and social security numbers of trans kids. They're trying to cull medical data to get information on trans kids in not only a couple of states that are sort of open to that, like Texas and Tennessee. It's kind of already in Texas and Tennessee tried to do this kind of thing. But this is in Philadelphia. The DOJ demanding a Philadelphia hospital hand over a broad swath of information related to gender-affirming care for minors. This includes individual patient names, dates of birth, and social security numbers. This came forward in a subpoena in a court filing this week. Can you speak to this?
Well, I suppose one preliminary issue, just thinking about it, is that if we really believe that the subpoenaing agency was going to hold that inviolate and secret, that might be one thing. But there's no confidence after what we saw with Doge. We saw how records were, there's all these lawsuits about how Doge obtained records, how they disseminated them, how they're trying to use them. They're, of course, trying to use them against the people who are not legally in the country. They're trying to use the Medicaid records and all kinds of other records to actually pinpoint them, find where they are, and to deport them. So, of course, we're very, very worried what misuse is going to be made. In terms of whether the government agency can get this under the subpoena, I imagine every one of these is going to be litigated, Mark. And I think a lot of times the government is going to lose because they're not going to, what do they need this information for? If they're going to cut off funds for a certain procedure, they cut it off for a procedure. What do they need to know that, Johnny Jones wanted to be Janie Jones, and that, Jones had such and such a procedure. What do they really need to know that for? If they're not going to pay for the procedure and it's proper not to pay for the procedure, what do they need to know? Or maybe if they can be redacted. You know, it's so funny. We criminal defense attorneys who deal with the government, everything gets redacted. You get these things that look like cottage cheese. They're all over. Everybody redacts everything. The judges look at you like, what the hell are you trying to find out? And everything's redacted. All of a sudden, the government can't seem to deal with redacted records. What do they need to know what the person's exact date of birth is? Once they know they're 13 and they had such and such a procedure, what do they need to know is Johnny Janie Jones? What do they need to know the person's birthday? Social security number? This is garbage. So I think some federal judges are going to say you can't have it, or they're going to say you can only have it, but heavily redacted. So it's just for the probative purpose that the subpoena is supposedly trying to achieve.
I mean, I don't even know what the probative purpose would be. So
I suppose, so Mark, I suppose if, again, Philadelphia may allow all of those things to be done, but it may be that some things are not going to be paid for by, let's say Medicaid. If Medicaid, what they call the bottom, not the top changes to a boy or girl, but the bottom changes. Let's say that some state is going to not pay for the bottom changes until a person is 17. They could want to make sure that at least ongoing that, or somebody who's had they have something 2 months before and then the bottom procedure happens 2 months later. You might want to know that this person's age and that they're about to have this bottom procedure, so that you could say, okay, under the law now, we want to make sure that some doctor in Philadelphia doesn't give them round 2, since it's against the law now for round 2. And certainly that would be the Tennessee and Texas justifications, because there's a lot of things that they won't be allowed. So I'm just saying there is some, I mean, it's so easy to be outraged by all this stuff, Mark, and it is outrageous because they have such bad intentions, the people who want to do this to the trans kids. But just imagining what a federal judge would actually do in Philadelphia, it would depend, of course, on what the federal rules were and what the Pennsylvania state laws were.
Okay. I want to finish up with Texas. Apparently there is this 10 Commandments thing. They want the 10 Commandments in every classroom. Now, judge saying that Texas can't require public schools to display 10 Commandments in class. And this is I guess there was, this is like one of those double injunction things, I think, where there was a group of Dallas area families and faith leaders. They wanted a preliminary injunction against the law, which goes into effect September 1st. They say the requirement violates the First Amendment's protections for the separation of church and state and the right to free religious exercise. So this ruling is against this new requirement. And this is where I go to David Katz, who often says they're losing in court. I believe this is the third state that has lost or blocked by a court on this 10 Commandments thing, on this church and state separation. Can you speak to sort of the general premise and then this case in Texas?
Well, this kind of issue, Mark, has bounced around so long. It was on my bar exam. And I didn't take the bar exam just yesterday because there is this tension between, the free exercise of religion, but also not imposing your religion on people who have a different religion or don't have any, established religion or don't believe in God at all. And all of those people have a right to the free exercise of their religious principles. And then, of course, the parents get involved in these things and they say, well, I want my child to be brought up with the 10 Commandments in the classroom. And then there's, I think, a rabbi is one of the people involved in this and saying, well, no, my kids go to a public school and I don't want the 10 Commandments standing there and them being told that, that's part of Christianity, that, that they're being basically brainwashed in a way. So, one thing that always fascinates me, and then the argument by the religious people is not really religious, it's historical. There's a tradition of having the 10 Commandments. Mark, you went to public school like I did. I went before you did. The 10 Commandments were not up. The flag was up, and there was showing you how to print and do cursive writing. Remember that? From A to Z, and the flag was up in the corner, and there were no 10 Commandments. I would believe that these people were interested in our historical traditions of our great religions if they wanted to have also the 5 precepts of Islam. I haven't heard of one of these Bible bangers yet wanting to have the 5 precepts of Islam up in the courtroom. So I think that they're going to win. I think that the Supreme Court's pretty good on that issue, that you cannot have the 10 Commandments up. They've allowed some funding of, Mark, they've allowed some funding of religious schools. If everybody gets grading on their entrance, then the Catholic school gets grading on their entrance too. And there's some things with textbooks where they'll pay for textbooks, all from the bar exam review, Mark, many, many years ago. So don't take this to the bank, but there are certainly some things that they can do that you could argue support religion and support particular religions. But the 10 Commandments up in the classroom is too far. That will be struck down. If it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, it will be struck down by the lower courts. And that's true even in Louisiana and Texas, because the precedents are clear enough that you can't put the 10 Commandments up. It's religious indoctrination, Mark.
I get it. I'll just read this, and then I will try to just parry back at you for a moment. But
Parry.
The judge in this decision said, quote, even though the 10 Commandments would not be affirmatively taught, the captive audience of students likely would have questions which teachers would feel compelled to answer. That is what they do. The displays are likely to pressure the child against, this is what the judge wrote. Plaintiffs into religious the child, that is to say, plaintiffs into religious observance, meditation on, veneration, and adoption of the state's favored religious scripture, and into suppressing expression of their own religious or non-religious background and beliefs, at least while they're at school. There is also insufficient evidence of a broader tradition of using the 10 Commandments in public education. There is no tradition of permanently displaying the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms. There are ways in which students can be taught any relevant history of the 10 Commandments without the state selecting an official version of Scripture, approving it in state law, and then displaying it in every classroom on a permanent basis. So that is the judge's decision.
School is not Sunday school.
Right. But in the Supreme Court, isn't there a disposition among the controlling justices toward religious doctrine? And at minimum, it's innocuous quality, and it's not really a problem. It's like, if we're not telling them they have to worship, we're just putting it up there. And worse, isn't there a tendency on the part of those controlling justices toward actually wanting to get some religiosity into the culture of America?
I just think on the 10 Commandments, on this particular issue, the law is clear enough. Not that they've always followed precedent.
They gave the president. They gave the president immunity. David.
But on
Katz.
this, and that's another outrage. But this is clear enough,
Okay.
Mark. This one's clear enough that the Supreme Court will not change, in my opinion. But what they have been doing is they've been doing things like the Hobby Lobby case. They've said, okay, they can exercise their religion in ways that I wouldn't have agreed with. And when it comes down to hospitals, they've said that hospitals don't have to perform certain kind of services. And then they say, come on, there must be somebody there who is not against their religion to perform an abortion. What do you mean? Because it's a religiously funded or religiously founded hospital, it doesn't have to either perform abortions or do other things that, and the Supreme Court they've sort of bounced around on that. But these are not their most, let's put it this way, they've done a lot more outrageous things than what they're going to do on this case.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Small comfort.
You can take that both ways. Like they'll rule either way. I don't know. I'm out of time, David Katz. Love talking to you. Thank you for being here. Jeanette says, when will they want a big, beautiful picture of Trump in every classroom, every hospital, everywhere? I'm going to be sick thinking about that. Jeanette, obviously not a Trump fan. That's an interesting question, though, that Jeanette sort of provokes, which is, that wouldn't be, you could have a picture of the President of the United States in every classroom. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think you probably could, on the theory that he's the president of all the people. There'd be an awful lot of protests about it, and there would be. I don't know what school it would make a whole lot of sense for, but they may do it. In these towns where there's big, and in every federal courthouse and a lot of other federal buildings, there's a huge picture of Trump and Vance, just like there used to be of Biden and Harris.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean,
that's avert your eyes. You just avert your eyes when you go in or out.
But I mean,
January 20th.
The case should be over political speech, I guess, and should political speech be there? But I think you'd likely get away with it without any problem. David, I love.
You know what kids would do? You know what kids would do? They'd throw spitballs and everything else. As soon as the teacher turned around. So,
you can imagine the fights, the MAGA kids against the anti-MAGA kids. Oh my God!
It would be
All right,
fraught. It would be fraught, Mark.
David, love you as the audience does. Great seeing you here, and I look forward to next Thursday. Thank
One last
you, David.
thing, we had a wonderful lunch. Mark and I had a wonderful lunch this week.
Yes, we did.
We had a great time in. Do you mind saying? At Arts Deli.
At Arts Deli in Studio City, California.
Be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
There was no alcohol involved. Katz loaded up on some. Katz is a very lean man. Like you're in good shape. I think you're a swimmer or something, aren't you?
I am a swimmer. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Saying that. You're in
No,
good shape, Mark. This is a mutual admiration society.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I really had fun. And hello, Kim.
Girl, you just woo.
Yeah.
Kim, are you gonna pop out?
Yeah, Kim is there. She is. Mark, please ask Katz if our normal checks and balances will be at risk in a post-Trump U.S. government. I had that same question last week, and we didn't answer it. So, all right.
Okay, can I try it real quick, please? If our normal checks and balances, no, I think
at risk in a post-Trump U.S. government. Will our normal checks and balances still be at risk, or will they be at risk? I don't. Yeah.
No,
okay.
and I think Trump can't pardon everybody. And remember, the presidential immunity case only applies to Trump. It doesn't apply to any of his minions. It doesn't apply to some of those INS, those ICE agents. We'll figure out who they were behind their masks. We'll figure out who were there. We'll figure out, who harassed that kid, the one who died on the 210 freeway here just recently. The one that they got so terrified that he jumped off.
He ran from them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's true. But I mean, danger. What do they say? If you do things like that, it invites danger. That's a dangerous situation. And they ought to figure out someone's going to go this way, someone's going to go that way with their billions and billions of dollars of budget. They should post somebody to make sure that those things can't happen. They had somebody on a rooftop who got so scared he ran, and the roof was too high. You could say, well, my God, why would they panic that much? Well, if your whole life in America, you've been here 20, 25 years, your kids were here, your significant other or wife was here, and you knew you're going to be torn away from them and torn out of a country that you'd gotten used to and where you're making an honest living, just doing a day's labor. Yeah, you might panic too.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand why they panic. Okay, we're out of time here. Why do I keep getting these questions for Katz? Give me a break. Inlays says, Katz, please explain the ramifications to the world if Russia takes all of Ukraine. People act like it's no big deal.
The good news is that Russia is not going to take all of Ukraine, but under this folly of Trump's, they would take about 20%. They'd have no assurance of being in NATO. Supposedly, they're going to be posting security guarantees. That means like real European and U.S. troops, so that if Putin tried to do again what he's done to so many countries, and he broke his word again with the Ukraine deal that might be made, that he would have to basically start World War III. And I don't think the U.S. and especially Trump are going to post anybody over there enough to make it be World War III. So in a couple
I will
of
tell
years,
you what is happening in Ukraine.
They go right back in.
I'll tell you, Katz. I will tell everybody. Let me tell you what's happening in Ukraine. I've said it. Donald Trump is walking backward away from Ukraine. He's realizing that this isn't a photo op situation where he can just roll out a red carpet, set up a flyover, meet Vladimir Putin and give him a ride in his presidential limo, and then take a victory lap and pick up a Nobel Peace Prize. He's realizing that he doesn't know the history, and he's fired all the people who have the history of these regions. The State Department has been cored out, but he gets that this is complicated. Vladimir Putin keeps talking about how NATO provoked it. I got the European leaders here. I just want out of this whole thing. And he is walking back. And watch, he's going to foist this situation onto NATO and to the European Union, and he's going to foist it onto Putin, and he's going to add Zelensky and say, you guys work it out. I've done all I can here. There's no reason that this thing should be continuing. And I, Donald Trump, I didn't start this thing. If I'd been in power, it never would have happened, blah, blah, blah. And then he's going to walk it out. And I'm telling you, he's going to wash his hands of this situation. That's what's going to happen. There's
Mark,
no
one very last
deal
thing.
that's going to be made.
One very last thing. If the Europeans will pay for it, and that's one of the reasons that Trump is doing the right thing at the moment, because NATO has said that they will spend real live Europeans' money to buy our American armaments to send over to Ukraine. That's pretty tempting to not Trump, God knows what Trump is thinking, but to his backers who are going to make a lot of money off of selling that stuff. That was a pretty good one. And if the Europeans keep spending money, that's what they have to do. They have wonderful social nets, but they have to spend money on the defense budget and save Ukraine. There's still time, but they have to be saving Ukraine now and spending money, the Europeans, to do it.
Well, the two things you said are really important, and we've noted. When we say we're selling them weapons, it's not the American people who gain anything from that. It's defense contractors who gain something from that. But as David has pointed out, they're Trump's supporters, and they're in the orbit of Trump. So he's happy to take care of them. But I also think then that you're looking at a continued war of attrition, and sadly, Russia is likely to win that war of attrition. But we can continue on this.
There aren't that many resources. No, Russia's hard pressed. Russia's hard pressed. They can't keep it up that much longer. So the Europeans got to hang in there.
I'm back and forth on that. Who's got the upper hand? But we'll continue with it another time. David, so appreciate you, and thank you for being here.
Great being with you. Hey, Kim.
All right. Yeah.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
It is wild to handicap what's happening in Ukraine. I think there are, as I've often said, credible narratives on both sides. And I think it's just hard to know. I mean, I know there's some high-profile, experienced military men and women. I've mostly seen men, although I'd love to play. I'll do it maybe tomorrow if there's time. Actually, I'm not going to have time tomorrow because I've got Nathan. Maybe I'll do it on Monday. Some interesting takes on what's going on in Ukraine, like from Fiona Hill, who used to be an ambassador there. Luis with a $5 super chat. He's always the king of sarcasm. Let's see what he has here. Mark, thank you for your KFI interview with the Foosh. It was so very nice to hear his voice. Oh, be well, Stefan. Yeah, that was not sarcastic at all. Yeah, we had a nice update on our kind of the board op there who was in that horrible car wreck. We showed it to you, and it was just great to talk to him again. You go under it, not over it, Mark, on the wall. Yes, even though it's been painted black, the southern wall. You go under it is the plan. Ashley Petra is still one of my favorite names on the show with a $20 super sticker. Wow. I love it. Ashley, big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ashley, I rather enjoy seeing you again as part of our group. The Lady Beatrice with a $5 super chat. What can we do, though? News and talk radio is too important, yet there's no law to protect it. FYI, Vance getting booed is priceless. Yes, Vance getting booed. Very well done.
We might have already had this one. I'm not sure.
You did. Yeah, you put it up there before. My cat is
better peacemaker.
Peacemaker as the cat. Yeah. I'm looking to see if there was any countervailing was used by David Katz. Nullifidian notes it's a ding word, and he is right, or she is right. I don't know whether Nullifidian's a man or a woman. And does it matter? Do we see sex anymore? I mean, it's all one continuum. Let's be honest.
Gender is
We're all
fluid.
a little bit girl, a little bit boy, aren't we? I beg to differ with your guest, Dimitri, Mark. He was too pro-Russia and anti-West. That's from Vicky and Sausalito. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Yeah, I don't disagree that he was not representing a muscular defense of the West. I think you're right. He was more looking at the situation from the political underpinnings that inform a lot of Russia's understanding of the world. I wouldn't dispute that. I also think I welcome, as you know, different perspectives. And again, on the Russia-Ukraine thing, and by the way, this is taking nothing from Vicky's point, which is, I think, right, probably, about Dimitri, but I would say that I think it's confusing. I really do. And I'm seeing Wersheimer, for example, over and over. I'll play you some Wersheimer maybe next week. And, he's the guy that Dimitri talks about. And, from the very start, he's talked about how, the Russians have really gained the upper hand. So on the military movements and who has the upper hand militarily in Ukraine, there, as I've said over and over, so many credible arguments on both sides. I still believe that the war of attrition favors the Russians. But again, David K. Johnson, I think, would tell you the Ukrainians actually have the upper hand, and that Putin is just going down this expensive hole, expensive in terms of money and expensive in terms of manpower, all of the sacrifices, the human sacrifice that's been made on the Russian side. I think that's what David K. Johnston would say. I mean, I think others who talk about the fact that the Russians have the upper hand would say the Ukrainians are paying that same price. They're paying a price, literally, economically, being underpinned a bit by the U.S. and also now the NATO alliance. But the number of Ukrainian men that lose their lives every day in this conflict, it also is a high number. So, again, is there a political or militarily viable course for them to continue on the Ukrainian side? That's a legitimate question. So, again, I can see both sides. And there you go. Yeah, Malcolm Nance says the Ukrainians have the advantage. I get it. I mean, you can just really begin to knock around. You know, for every Malcolm Nance, I can show you a Wersheimer and the others on the side of the fact that Russia is likely having the upper hand. Tomorrow, in addition to Friday Fabulous Florida, Nathan Taylor joins from the yes. When you want to talk elections and the fight for fair elections, Nathan is a great guy to talk statistics with. He can give you the numbers on the election. And I might say, when it comes to mail-in ballots and the fight over mail-in ballots and trying to maintain, in effect, mail-in balloting, you know, that was already something that Trump mentioned, that Putin told him. Putin told me we shouldn't have mail-in ballots. We're the only country on earth that's got mail-in ballots. It doesn't make any sense. That's what Putin said that to me. Did he? Yeah. By the way, we're not the only. Many countries on earth have mail-in ballots. So maybe you want to tell Vladimir that when you talk next.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We're out of time, and I hate that we had to leave on this Ukraine thing. Please.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time, but Kim's next with the after party. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.